Viewpoint, a program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. And we do have a politician going to call in here very shortly. The former state representative Tom Cross, who is now a candidate for the Illinois State Treasurer, is going to be calling us, and we'll have a chance to talk with Tom, his candidacy, and find out what he has in mind. First and foremost, we have to go to some kudos, Mrs. Busby. So why don't you kind of talk about the young lady from Hartsburg-Emden here?
Well, you know, I like her so much.
Yes, Alexis.
And, of course, she's very British. Alexis Asher is just a really interesting,
Lovely
nice
lady.
person, and she was recently honored by the Illinois FFA for her services. Alexis also drives the school bus up there.
Yeah.
Yep. And she's got a cute home, and she's just a neat gal. And here she was right on the front of the paper with our guest from last week, Betsy Pesh.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
So good for her.
We had Betsy on last week honoring her for her services to the Hartsburg-Emden school system and the FAA. And lo and behold, here's another Hartsburg-Emden citizen. And we had one further, young Cody Conrady received the FFA's American Star Award at the convention. So congratulations to Cody. It's an interesting thing that Hartsburg-Emden just jumped right to the front.
Well, they're right in there. I'll tell you, that's great.
Well,
that's great. That's important.
Part of that is a result of Mrs. Pesh's dedication down through these number of years. So anyway, it's nice to have them. We're going to have former representative. You know, it's nice to think, I want to say former representative because he opted to resign to run for office as opposed to hedging his bets and keeping his office and going ahead and run for the next level up. So he did it with a matter of integrity as opposed to, if I don't win, I've still got this.
Yeah, right.
So, you know,
Plan B.
So many of the politicians do exactly that. The fact that we have somebody like that is kind of refreshing. I'm almost afraid to open up the Pekin Street closing, but if anybody has a comment or an opinion, 648-5510. We may have to cut you off in midair as Mr. Cross calls. But if anybody would like to weigh in on that Pekin Street closing, I think it might be appropriate. The City Fathers are...
Am I a person? May I weigh in?
What about it, Jim? Sure. Okay, yes.
You just let anybody talk, don't you?
Management says it's okay, so you go right ahead.
I don't like it.
You don't like the closing? Well, all right. Well, it's interesting. She and I are finding opposite sides of the picture for a change.
Okay, now you tell me then.
Well, on balance, and I think you may be right, but on balance, I would opt for a little inconvenience. This is just on the surface of the thing now. A little inconvenience in lieu of or in exchange for beautifying that sore thumb that sits there. With those caboose cars out of there and the railroad cars out of there and restoring the depot to its original footprint, that is the railway expresses on the north end and then the depot per se. And if I understand correctly, that's a big if I understand correctly, there's going to be a significant amount of landscaping and beautifying there. It might be worth the trade-off. So there's my take on that. 648-5510. Somebody would like to argue with either Judy or Bill? We'd be happy to have that happen. We'll pound this out at your coffee table. Okay,
that'd be fine. That'd be just fine. I think that the beautification idea is nice because the Pekin Street crossing is kind of an eyesore-ish type place.
Yeah.
Look in either direction.
I'm kind of excited to see that depot get restored. That has kind of memories for the old guy Jim, way back. I used to meet the train about 4 o'clock in the morning, and they would carry the papers, the pantograph down in great big bundles, and the local carriers would meet the train there, haul those papers into the station, sit there and fold them, and put them on our bikes and take off and deliver the pantograph. In the winter, that wasn't much fun. Well,
No,
Jim-
that's a hard job for a kid.
Yeah.
It really is.
Okay, Tom, hang on a second.
Oh, here we are
Do we
going
have
now.
somebody who wants to wait?
Talk to you just a second.
Oh, Mr. Cross? Oh, yeah, all right. And we
Good.
have on the air this morning live Mr. Tom Cross, candidate for State Treasurer of Illinois. And, sir, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. I want you to know, we just made a statement here on the air a couple of minutes ago, Tom. You're one of those politicians who opted to resign your current position as a representative in order to run for a higher office. You didn't hedge your bets by keeping your representative's position in case you lost. So I thought that was a matter of integrity.
Well, I don't disagree with you, and I agree with that. And I got to tell you, I think it's so important right now to try to change the state and turn it around and improve it. That to me, it was worth it. I think it's a great state. I think we're in a real bad spot right now, but I think we can make it better. And I want to be part of that and try to fix it.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you work into this. And apropos of that, I believe today you're announcing a petition to stop the tax hike. Perhaps we could best serve our listeners. And by the way, listeners, if you have questions and so forth, 648-5510. I think this fact that you're initiating this petition to stop the tax hike might be a good place to start, Tom. And I'll pass the baton to you to further expand on that.
Well, look, I think that there's a movement in this state by some folks to get as much money as they can from taxpayers, and it's no effort to cut spending, no effort to live within our means, but to just there was the temporary tax, there's the trying to make it permanent, there's the graduated tax, we already have sales tax, there's the progressive tax. Well, our opponent was on a local radio station not far from you a couple weeks ago and said, well, we ought to expand the service tax, and that would include getting a haircut, going to the bowling alley, getting your tonsils out, having someone prepare a will. And it's just enough is enough. And when do we stop the continuous push to get money? So my belief is we have to be aggressive, and we have to reach out to taxpayers and Illinois citizens and say, help us. We've got to let some of these folks in Springfield, politicians, know that we can't keep looking to the taxpayers for more money. We got to stop it. And that's the incentive for the petition drive to stop this expansion of the service tax.
Mr. Cross, another tax that I'd like to hear you address is the business tax. Now, 3 entities, parts of the Caterpillar organization, are leaving Illinois. An awful lot of industry has left Illinois because our structure here, as far as business and taxes is concerned, is pretty darn lousy, and they can move someplace else and do their business more efficiently.
You raise a very good point, and part of the recovery for Illinois has to be exactly in this area. And I met with the chairman of Caterpillar a few months ago, and if you put a building in Indiana that's the same size as a building in Illinois with the same number of employees doing the same type of work, you pay 5 times more for what is known as workers' compensation insurance. If somebody gets hurt at work, in Illinois, it costs an employer 5 times more to insure that person. So that's one example. Obviously our corporate tax is high, property taxes are high, so it is a real problem. Not just the uncertainty of whether or not the state is going to turn things around, but how we treat business compared to the states around us. And that's, I think, the key relative to the states around us, who I think have gotten the message and are a lot more willing to create an environment for businesses to want to be in their states.
Well, that's imperative. How is it then that the treasurer's office could take part in making the business climate better in Illinois so that we don't have any more of Caterpillar's installations leaving?
One of the things that we're very focused on, and it's connected to this whole conversation, is making sure we have a balanced budget. Because when I go out and talk to business people, it can be a farmer, it can be the owner of a little hardware store, it can be the owner, the chairman of Caterpillar. He or she will say to me, "We're concerned about the uncertainty of Illinois, and you've got to get your fiscal house in order." We haven't had a balanced budget in this state in 10 years. Our Constitution mandates that we have a balanced budget. It doesn't say, "Hey, folks down in Springfield, just go take your best shot at it or give it the old college try." It says balance your budget. Don't spend more money than you have. And we sit here today with about somewhere between $5 and $6 billion of unpaid bills because the General Assembly hasn't lived within the Constitution. It also means that we have to pay people that provide services to Illinois a late fee and penalty. We spent $300 million in late fees and penalties last year. To me, that's insane. So, as treasurer, my belief is that the treasurer has a duty or a responsibility to enforce that provision of the Constitution. And that, if that means, it means saying to the General Assembly, here are the numbers, this is how much you have to spend. You certainly can't go over that number. If you want to spend less, that's a good thing too. But if you don't live within your means, if it means we have to go to court, then we're going to do that. It's imperative that the Speaker of the House, people like Mike Madigan and the Governor, Pat Quinn, live within their means. And as you know, we have an excellent judiciary. Some of the finest judges that I know are in even your area, one of the best. And we need to make sure that we go to court to enforce our Constitution.
Well, that's exactly right. The state has, but for years, way back when I was in business, and I did some state contract work, and I finally took the name off the bidding list because I got tired of waiting for the money way back then, and there was no reason for that at all. You address waste, Mr. Cross. Right below us in Springfield, the IDOT had decided that we needed a new bridge crossing Salt Creek down there. And we probably needed a new bridge per se, but instead of that, just putting a new bridge in, we're going to extreme amount of money to take out a little minuscule curve that they said it was for some reason. It's a gross matter of waste the way they handle this, and that's just one little example. You have to wonder who's doing the thinking behind this when they know the state, the condition that we're in. Mind-boggling.
We just saw a budget passed in Springfield that was not balanced again by several $100 million. And within this budget that just passed, there was $10 million in that budget to fix up a theater in the city of Chicago. Yeah. Now, I'm sure it's a nice theater, but what are we doing spending $10 million when we have an unbalanced budget? Many of the Democrats in Springfield are talking about raising taxes, talking about, making the temporary tax permanent. My opponent coming along and saying, let's do a service tax. I really got to ask you, what are they thinking? I mean, people can't put up with this any longer, in my opinion. And, the Speaker of the House had $35 million put in the budget to fund a new school in his district. And in Chicago, they just closed a bunch of schools. Mm-hmm. I just don't think there's any logic, and they don't think like we all do when we're sitting around our kitchen tables trying to pay our bills.
Well, Representative Cross, you used the operative word there. It's thinking, and therein is the problem. There's not much of that going on. Back to this business that we opened up with, the petition to stop the tax hikes. I counted on the list that I received some 20 plus taxes that would be, including dry cleaning folks, cabs, taxis, health club membership fees, pet grooming. Now, how inane is that? That's just anyway. That if they have an opportunity, folks out there, to sign that petition, with Representative Cross and Judy and I would certainly urge you to get your name on there in a quick hurry.
There are actually hundreds of examples that we when we sent you that notice, we didn't put them all on there, but anytime, any service, getting your teeth cleaned, so that, like you said, the dry cleaner, the haircut, you take your two or three kids to get the haircut, they're all going to be assessed that service tax. So it is very expansive and a lot broader than people realize. But I appreciate your interest, and I appreciate you having me on.
I don't even think that budget is the appropriate term to use here, if you want my personal opinion, and I know you do.
Yes, I do.
Because what we do in the state of Illinois, it would seem to me, is we decide we're going to spend this many dollars. So now we've got to have the money to back that up. Well, I think of budgeting as being, this is how much money I have. I can't have any expectation of a windfall over and above this. Therefore, I have to use this the best way I can. Now, that's how I would determine budgeting.
Well, first of all, that makes a lot of sense. Second of all, this is a state that's done a miserable job led by the folks that are running the state of also having a 3 to 5 or 10-year plan of where we're going to be as a state. How can we lower our spending? How can we lower our taxes? How can we pay our bills? How can we make this a better jobs climate? I don't expect that all of this is all going to be fixed overnight. I'd like it to be. I'd like to snap my fingers, but that's not how life works. But
I wish you would too.
I wish I remember watching Bewitched many, many years ago. She just wiggled her nose. But
Yeah.
But I
Some wiggle too.
Yeah. but we've got to start planning our future and thinking, just like, again, what do we do at the dining room table or the breakfast table, saying, well, I got some big bills here. Is there some light at the end of the tunnel? And how do we, I'm going to pay a little more on this credit card every month, or I'm going to pay, maybe if I'm fortunate enough, pay down my house a little faster. However, but that's called planning, and government also has, I think, been bad about not doing that, at least the folks running this place over the last 10 years.
How did the state of Illinois, in its infinite wisdom, decide that the taxpayers would foot the bill for an Obama presidential museum? Since it's not done that way for other presidents ever. It's by donations.
Well, that was not done by us. That was, and it has not become law yet. That was a proposal of Speaker Madigan, and that's the mindset that we hear from Chicago, of thinking, everybody, this is how we do it in Chicago. You all need to do it, and you're right. The other cities, the other museums, Clinton's and the Bush Museum and Reagan's, were funded with private money, and
they should.
And I think we all have seen the kind of power that President Obama has to raise money. He raised more than any other president. He certainly has some friends that can do that if they so choose, but we can't afford to do it. I agree.
Yeah. Representative Cross, I'd like to ask you, we have a comptroller and a treasurer, distinctive, separate duties. Can those be combined and have an effective one-office service for the state?
Should they be? Yes, they should be combined. That would save us. There's a classic example where we should set an example in state government. We put them together. Judy Topinka supports that idea, who's the current treasurer, or the current comptroller.
Mm-hmm.
I actually filed the bill to do it, the constitutional paperwork, about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. The current treasurer, Dan Rutherford, approves it. I think we should do it. It would save us $12 million, and it's something we should do. Again, the Speaker of the House has refused to call it for a vote, and it is a classic example of where we could consolidate government and make a difference.
Does Illinois still have more levels of government than any other state?
I believe we do.
Well, whatever Dirksen said, $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon you're talking about real money.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Tom, you, while you were in office, you were a sponsor of a law new laws that cracked down on the fraud and the abuse in the state's pension system. Comment about that, sir?
Well, think about that fellow that was able to substitute teach for one day and get a pension for life.
That's ridiculous.
That is so unfair to, your listeners. You probably have a lot of state workers and teachers that are retirees. Mm-hmm. That's incredibly unfair to them. It's incredibly unfair to taxpayers. So we changed the law to not allow that. There were also folks in Chicago that started out working for the city. They got into joined some labor unions. Then when they retired, they were getting both the city pension and their labor pension. So we went after both of those examples where there was some fraud and abuse. And we need to, in my mind, keep a kind of a dual track there. How can we best protect the people that are retired, but also protect the taxpayers? And we felt very strongly about that, and we're fortunate enough to get bipartisan support, and that passed and became law to stop the abuse in both examples.
While you were there also, you were involved and have been involved with this Bright Start College Savings Program, and you have significant effort to protect that and make sure that it stays whole.
Well, what we have to do about Bright Start, college has gotten so expensive, and I think we need to make sure just that we have good investment opportunities for Bright Start. And people, if they want to use Bright Start as an instrument to save money for college, we just need to make sure we provide good investment opportunities. The fees are low, and make sure that you can have some aggressive or some conservative, depending on the age of your kid, and that the fund is monitored regularly. So actually, I think Dan Rutherford's done a nice job in that area, and we want to just kind of build on that.
Mm-hmm. Sir, do you have any thoughts about the prison closings that have been taking place that are on the board for other further consideration?
Well, I think it's always an issue of safety for the guards. One of the big issues is safety, and in terms of the manpower, the amount of work they do, and also you have people. Are they also going to have jobs? And you have to try to, in my opinion, you have to take all that in consideration. That's generally an issue left to the administration, but as far as the downstate communities, I think we have to be very, very careful about remembering those folks that are working there, whether it's having a job and their safety. And so all of that needs to go in there and making sure that they're taken care of.
Yeah, some people have a tendency to forget that there are some criminals in there for minor things, and there are also some folks in there for some very, very major infractions, and there are some bad people inside our prisons, really bad people, and they could care less about anybody else except themselves. And
that's how they got here.
Yeah, exactly. To put our guards and staff at risk by trying to think in terms of, they don't save money. I know everybody that's on the highway is aware of the fact that on certain days of the week, you see the Illinois Department of Correction buses running up and down the highway, transporting prisoners. That goes on every week. That has to be incredibly expensive, and I wonder, that comes under the domain, of course, of the Illinois Department of Corrections, and they're doing it for, obviously, good reasons, or they wouldn't be doing that.
Well, I was a prosecutor for 8 years, almost 9 years up in Tyndall County, and you're exactly right. There's some not so good people in the Department of Corrections, and they don't care about the guards, and that's the reality of the situation. You can never forget that.
Yeah, exactly. Representative Cross, I'd like to go back just a minute. While you were serving, you have received some deserved honors from the Illinois Chamber of Commerce and the Illinois States Attorneys Association, Farm Bureau, among other people, the Illinois Healthcare Association. Would you care to comment about those? I know you don't want to be reaching over your shoulder and patting your back, but these are deserved recognitions, and I'd just like to bring those to the front.
Well, it's very humbling. The General Assembly, there's several points about that. One is, it's not my General Assembly. It's the People's General Assembly, and it's the Citizens General Assembly. And if the Farm Bureau or the state's attorneys have some ideas that they can make their jobs better, can improve the agriculture community, and the Chamber improve the business community, it was always an honor and pleasure to work with them to do that. And so those awards were results of doing legislation on their behalf. They would come to me and say, hey, what about this or that? And that always was fulfilling to be able to do something and do it and get it passed, and work with the Illinois Farm Bureau, which agriculture is one of the our biggest assets. We have some of the best farmland in the world, and you want to perpetuate that. So yeah, those were very nice. I was very lucky.
Well, it's a matter of serving your constituency, And that, of course, is what you realize that you were elected to do, not serve the best interests of various folks who have special interest. That's the secret to serving down there.
Well, and those groups they're not money groups. Those are groups that are just made up of, Farm Bureau is made up of just farmers, and the prosecutors are out just doing their day-to-day work, trying to prove make sure their communities are safe. And I'm from a small county, Kendall County, that has a good agricultural base, and it was rural. It's starting to change a little bit. So it was about 40,000 people at one time when I started. So it's not a big county. So then that's what drives this state. It's things like the Farm Bureau and the Chamber. So that's what makes that very rewarding and makes me feel good.
Well, I appreciate. Tom, could you hold with us for just a few seconds? We need to honor some sponsors here. And
sure.
if you give us the courtesy of holding, we'll be right back to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning. We're right back live here in the studios of WLCN 96.3 FM. Our guest this morning is former Representative and current State Treasurer candidate Tom Cross from Oswego, Illinois. And the reason I emphasize former Representative is that Mr. Cross opted to resign his representative's seat in order to run for state treasurer. Instead of, as alluded to earlier in this morning in the opening of the program, instead of opting out to hedge his bets, so, well, if I don't win this, I'll still have my office. He did the matter of integrity. And we appreciate a candidate like that. So welcome back to this session, Tom. I would like to also ask you a comment about the almost traditional end of the sessions in June, when they never seem to have everything wrapped up, and sometimes they stop the clock and some of that foolishness. Comments about that to us. It seems to me there's so much divisiveness down there, and of course that's certainly true on the national level, more so, if possible. Nobody can seem to sit down across the aisle and have a cup of coffee or perhaps a libation and talk about things and get them served. What's your comment about that, sir?
Well, I think it's become part of the culture down there. When you have a one-party system, and unfortunately to a certain degree, in the General Assembly to a large degree, that's happened. And I think it becomes, a little bit of arrogance seeps in there, and and you start thinking, well, I don't need the other side. What's not bad when you have a two-party system, and when we used to have Republican governors and a Democrat House, it forced people to sit down and talk. That's not the case now, and so the Democrats can pretty much do whatever they want.
And do.
And when you do that, when you get a little arrogant, then it doesn't make for good government. And that's when you start seeing and hearing people talking about, well, we're going to fund the Obama Library, and we're going to we're not going to pay our bills, or we're going to put money in for a museum or a theater in Chicago. So that just, to me, that's almost, and I won't get names, I don't want to get personal, but that's a sign of arrogance, if you ask me.
Well, do you think that to have term limits would help cure that ill?
Well, I'll tell you what I really think.
Yeah.
And we could talk term limits, but I think one of the things that would be really helpful in this state is to change the way we do legislative maps. Right now, and both parties have been guilty of this, and Republicans as well as Democrats have been guilty of it, where the parties have said, where parties have drawn districts from a political standpoint just advantageous to one party and very detrimental to the other. I think we should take redistricting out of the hands of politicians.
Absolutely.
Good plan.
And put it in the hands of, you can do, Iowa, as professors do it. You can take these computers the way they are these days and put in the data and take out the politics, the incumbency protection, and just do legislative maps making sure that Logan County is intact, or Lincoln's intact, or Atlanta's intact. So that's the way you do it. I think that would make a big difference, both to the point of, the arrogance, and also to the point of the one-party control, and it would also force people to sit down. And I think that's the biggest problem we have in this, one of the biggest problems we have in this state.
How could that be brought about?
Well, right now there's a movement. There are two ways to do it. the General Assembly can put it on the ballot via a constitutional amendment vote in the General Assembly. The current party in charge has shown no interest in that. That's something I was pushing when I was the House Republican leader. Or you can do it by a citizen initiative, and you have to get a certain number of signatures. And that's actually being, literally, as we're on this show, they're discussing that and talking about that, the State Board of Elections. And there's been a movement this spring to do that. I don't know if they got enough signatures, and we'll know in the next few weeks or the next month. So that would be very healthy for our state, I believe, to change the way we do redistricting.
Most definitely, most definitely. Getting back to the budgeting or lack thereof, it's illegal, as I understand it, for a municipality to spend more than it takes in. You can't do that in Illinois. How come that doesn't extend to the state itself?
You're really on to a very good point, and that's one of the reasons why we got involved in this office, because I think we could use this office to engage in to take on this very issue. And that's what we were when I at the one of the outset part of this outset of the show, we talked about using this office to enforce the Constitution. Every one of your listeners has to follow the law and follow the Constitution, and there's no reason why we shouldn't as a state. Now, it's not at the moment a criminal penalty, but it's very clear that it says we can't spend more than we take in. So we're going to be very, very, very aggressive on this point if we're fortunate enough to be elected treasurer. So it's a fascinating issue, and I think if you're going to turn this state around, you have to live within your means. You have to pay your bills. You can't keep spending money you don't have, and that's why we're going to be tenacious, aggressive, and hard charging to make sure we live within our means.
Well, I noted that as we close the session in June, we'll be closing it very soon anyway, that we're going to have about a $3 billion shortfall as far as the revenues versus the expenditure are concerned, and it'll probably go more than that, $3 billion, as Everett Dirksen used to say, with a B.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, this total disregard for the budgeting process, and that's just there's an uncontrollable appetite for spending, and we Jim Edgar, when he was governor, was not always popular in Springfield because he said no, and we know what it's like as parents to say no. Our kids don't like that, so it's we've got to start doing that. There's a path to a new day in this state. It's a great state, and we need to turn it around. And that's why I think the treasurer's office can be part of that, and will be part of that if we win.
One of the things you list, Mr. Cross, is a particular interest of yours, is reducing government's footprint. It seems to me that the legislature this year and before is loath to take on the weighty things that have to be addressed, but they all got involved in cupcakes. I mean, how are we going to do something about people who make cupcakes in their home?
I got to tell you, I love cupcakes. That's kind of one of my many weaknesses. So I'm all for as many cupcakes being made and giving them to me as I'm going to allow. But yeah, look, it's pretty amazing that that was an example. A young girl, if I remember correctly, trying to do some baking in a local agency, giving her a hard time. It's a shame that it came to the General Assembly, but it's also a shame that they were giving her a hard time locally. But we do need to be focusing on all the items that you've talked about today: the budget, the jobs climate, the business climate, living within our means, and do that. We've got to fix Medicaid and things like that. That we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars wastefully there as well. So those are the big items that we also need to, we need to leave people alone. And it's, like this cupcake thing. Well, a young girl wants to make cupcakes in her kitchen, then she ought to be able to make cupcakes in her kitchen.
God, yes. The vision comes to mind right now. The kids out in the corner trying to sell lemonade, and I'm reminded of Ronnie Reagan's, God love him, great expressions about the worst thing the citizen can hear is, "I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you."
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, and look, how about that little girl? Here's a girl trying to, kind of the true entrepreneur, and maybe doesn't even know it, but just, I like making cupcakes. I want to make a little money. It's kind of, we ought to encourage that. That's what America's about.
Well, Big Brother, we have too much Big Brother at any level of government. By the way, just as an aside, a personal aside, Representative Cross, my partner Judy Busby's husband, Orv Busby, was on the city council for a number of years, and he had red pencils that he gave to his confreres up there, passed it around to make sure that we didn't operate in the red.
I like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there are enough red pencils for the Illinois General Assembly. That'd take a lot of trees.
I'll collect money for you so that you can buy them.
Are there any, as you go about campaigning in our state, the Representative Cross, what is there a most prevalent subject that comes up?
Taxes.
Taxes.
It's taxes, and people, it ranges in emotion. People are embarrassed about this state, they're frustrated about this state, and they're oftentimes just downright angry. And that can be Democrats, Independents, Republicans. People are close to wanting to give up, and I get that, but I always try to say, don't, man. This is our home. We want it to do well, but people are really at the end of the rope, and that can be happening in Logan County. It can be in Kendall County where I live, or down in Southern Illinois near Carbondale. It doesn't matter. People are fed up.
I agree with that, and I think we saw evidence of that here in Bruce Rauner getting the nod from his party to run for governor, because he wasn't in politics, and we just saw it on the federal level. And I think that there's an attitude about throw the bums out.
I'm sorry, there's an attitude of what?
I think there's an attitude about throw the bums out. Who's ever an innie they don't want.
Well, there is that. I believe that, and that is the case. But remember, it's hard to argue that. But there's been one party running this state. They primarily do it out of the city of Chicago, and there are a lot of good Republicans out there that are fighting real hard, trying to make the case that you've made on this show. Whether it's I think about Raymond Poe up in Springfield, or Rich Brower, and you had a good state rep not too long ago by the name of John Turner, who was one of the best. He's a judge now. His wife Sally, is your clerk. She does a great job, and there's good Republicans out there fighting for the right things. But there is that attitude. There really is that attitude.
Well, I always call Sally Turner the best county clerk in 102 counties, and I think I'm right about that. And that would include Oswego and Seward.
She is the best. I love Sally and John. John and I were seat mates when he was in Springfield, and he had to keep me under control. He was worried about some of my votes, he used to tell me all the time. So I would always ask him how to vote, and then I got my voting record a lot better, because he's so smart.
He is that. Representative Cross, we appreciate it. Representative Tom Cross, a former representative in the state legislature, and now a current and a great candidate for state treasurer. We appreciate your being with us, sir. I always try to close. I'll let you have a closing comment, sir, and then I have a closing comment to make. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks for having me. I'm passionate about this state. I love it. My dad's a retired Methodist minister. My mom was a teacher. We moved around a lot as a kid, and I don't want to move. I want this state to prosper. And if people want to join us, our website, www.jointomcross.com. We'd love to have you part of our effort. and our team, and we have a good opportunity to turn the state around. So thanks for having me.
We appreciate very much your presence, sir. Thomas Sowell once said, by the way, he had a lot of smart things to say. One of his things was, it is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting these decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. Thank you for Viewpoint. Thank you, Tom Cross.